Hi, First Assembly. I am Tunisha Hubbard, and I will be covering Wednesday Word for Pastor Wes Johnson tonight. And today we're going to springboard from Judges 14:4 and talk about an occasion against the enemy. So let's dive in. All right, so we're going to start. Judges 14:4 is sort of in the middle of Samson's story. So just to catch you up, Samson is one of the judges of Israel, and Samson's story actually starts with his father being introduced. And so his mother is, the mother is barren, and then she's told by an angel that she's going to have a child, that she is not to drink any strong wine or any drink, and this child will be a Nazarite from birth, and he'll begin the deliverance of Israel. So that's all of the stories that's going on in chapter 13. Chapter 14 starts with, and I'm going to read the first 4 verses. And it says, "Then Samson went down to Timnah and saw a woman in Timnah, one of the daughters of the Philistines. So he came back and told his father and mother, 'I saw a woman in Timnah, one of the daughters of the Philistines. Now therefore go get her for me as my wife.' Then his father and mother said to him, 'Is there no woman of the daughters of your relatives or among your people that you can take as a wife instead of an uncircumcised Philistine?' But Samson said to his father, 'Get her for me, for she looks good to me.' However, his father and mother did not know it was of the Lord, for he was seeking an occasion against the Philistines. Now the Philistines were ruling over Israel. And so this idea that the Lord was seeking an occasion against the Philistines is exactly what Samson's story is all about. Samson was given, we know that he had a call, and his call was to be a Nazarite. And we know from just reading after all of this that he had a gift, and his gift was his strength. And all of this was meant to begin the deliverance of Israel from the Philistines. And so we see here very early in his story that God is orchestrating everything in his life because he's looking for opportunities for Samson to fight against the enemy for Israel. And for us today, that might look like we all have an enemy, whether we acknowledge it or not, right? The Bible says the enemy goes about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And the strikes that hurt the enemy the most is when we snatch souls from him. So as Christians, when the Lord is seeking to use us to go into the enemy camp and win souls, are we available? Can the Lord use us? Can he have an occasion in our lives against the enemy? So we're going to go look into Samson's life and see what it looked like when Samson was in control of his gift, when Samson surrendered his gift to the enemy, and when Samson surrendered his gift to the Lord. And so we're just going to look at how the way he stewarded his gift and his call determined how effective he was against the enemy. So we're going to learn some lessons on how we can be effective against the enemy. So we start with, we're right in chapter 14. And so Samson goes, he says he wants this woman as his wife, and they have their wedding feast. He says, he gives them a riddle. He gives riddle, there's 30 men, and he says, whoever can answer this riddle owes, if you can answer this riddle, I will have to give you 30 pieces of clothing and some spoils. If you can't answer it, you have to give it to me. So the men, the Philistines, went to the wife and they asked her find out this information for us. You're one of us. She agrees. She gets the information, gives it to them. Samson realizes when they answer the riddle that she must have betrayed him. And Samson is angry. He goes off, he kills 30 Philistines, takes their stuff, gives it to these men, and he takes off without his wife. Some point later, he comes back for his wife, only to learn that her father given her to another man. So Samson is angry all over again. He catches 300 foxes, ties them together tail by tail, puts lit torches, this is with fire, and looses them in a grain field and destroys the entire field. After this, he goes back to Israel. He goes and he stays in the cleft of a rock. The Philistines are looking for him because this massive destruction of their grain, this is their livestock. And he goes to Israel, the Philistines go to Israelites looking for Samson. 3,000 men from Judah go find Samson and say, what have you done to us? Do you not know that the Philistines are ruling over us? So Samson agrees to be tied up and be handed over to the Philistines. When he gets into their territory, it says the Spirit of the Lord came upon him. He broke free from his ropes, and he kills 1,000 Philistines with just the jawbone of a donkey. And so after this, it says Samson got so thirsty, he cried out to the Lord. He said, Lord, am I going to die of thirst? And the Lord does not let that happen. The Lord opens up a hollow place, and Samson gets water right there. And then so Samson continues. The next time we see Samson after this, he is with a Philistine prostitute. While he's with her, the men are in the city. They encamp and they're waiting for him to come out. And he comes out, he takes the entire gate off of their city, takes it up on a mountain and leaves it there. And so this sort of ends the first section of his life, where we see Samson is the one who is in control of his gifts and his call. And so what does it look like if we are in control, right? If we are just being self-sufficient with our gifts, what can we learn from Samson? We can see throughout his life that Samson is able to do things. Samson is effective with his gifts, but it's not nearly as effective as he could be. This is a diminished capacity because he is the one who's in control. He is always dissatisfied. He seems to never be at peace. Nothing seems to be working right. He doesn't seek God, and it's not because he doesn't know he needs to, because he did when he felt like he wasn't in control. So it's when we have this confidence in our own abilities and we don't feel like that we need to call on the Lord. That's when we know that we are working on our own strength, right? And we may see God from time to time, like Samson did when he came up to a really difficult situation that he knew that his own strength could not bring him out of. He sought the Lord. But that did not mean that he wasn't being self-sufficient in all of the other aspects of his life, because he was. And so for us, we have to look at that. What might that look like for us in our everyday lives, right? What is your gift? What are the things that you are strong at? You might not be physically strong, but are you a strong communicator? Are you a strong speaker? Are you strong in influence? And are you using those things to further the kingdom? Are you asking the Lord how he wants you to use your gifts to further the kingdom? Or are you just using them for your own gains and for your own benefits and for your own pleasure? Because that's when we know we're being self-sufficient and not actually using our gifts for the Lord. And so to wrap up this section, we're just going to talk a little bit about how much damage Samson was able to do when he was in control. He killed 1,030 Philistines. He destroyed an entire field of grains, and he removed the gates of a city. And that's a big deal because those gates are their protection. So he is able to inflict some damage against the enemy. But then in the next phase of his life, we see Samson surrendering his gift to the enemy. Now, what does that look like? For Samson, starting in chapter 16, verse 4, we see Samson meets Delilah and he falls in love with her. And then Delilah is recruited by the Philistine leaders just basically to spy on Samson. And she is going to work against Samson, but from the inside. And so Samson sets about, she asks him, what is the source of your strength? And he tells her, if you tie me up with 7 fresh ropes and dried cords, that'll take away my strength. She does it. Then he tells her, use new unused ropes, and she does that. He tells her, braid my 7 locks into a web and pin it up. And she does that. And then it says, she continued to nag Samson continually. And it says that his soul was annoyed to death. And Samson told her everything that was in his heart. So obviously, just like she had been doing, when Samson told her, if you cut my hair, I will lose my strength, she cuts his hair. And so in this section, I want to talk a little bit about what are some red flags that might be going on in your life, so you can recognize if you have or if you are on the verge of surrendering your gifts and your calling to the enemy. And some of the things that we saw in Samson's life was he found that every time he shared something, it was being used against him. So he told her something, it wasn't even true. And she did the exact same thing to test him. Do you feel like you are being attacked? Like every single time you share information, it's being used against you. Just keep that in mind. That's a red flag. You're going to keep a lookout. Once you start seeing that, pay attention. Are you being pressured to do things that you know you shouldn't do or things you prefer not to do? Again, we saw Samson. He did not want to tell her, but she's nagging him. She's continually pressing him to get this information. If that is happening in your life in any capacity, pay attention, because this is subtle. Samson, in this case, Samson is in love with this woman. So he is just trusting the wrong person. So this is way more subtle than you might think. So we have to pay attention to what is going on in our lives. Another red flag to look for is your soul annoyed? And I know sometimes in our society, we would say this and it almost seems like a joke. And it's like, oh my gosh, I do this and it is killing my soul. If you feel like that's a red flag. You have to stop and pay attention. Start talking to the Lord about what might be going on in your life. And then the final one here is, do you feel like you are on the verge of giving up because you are so tired? Like Samson, she just kept pressing him. And Samson is giving up because he is so tired. He is tired of fighting to keep his secret. He is tired of fighting to protect his gift and his abilities. Do you feel tired? Then you need to step back. You need to step back and just look at what is going on in your life. After this, we see that Samson she shaves his head, she calls the Philistines, and so they put him in chains, they gouge out his eyes, they throw him in prison, and now he is just grinding stones. This is what the enemy has done. And what we see here is just a plan of the enemy. He will attack the source of your strength. That's what he's going to go after. What makes you strong? That's the thing he will want to destroy. And then he will go after your vision. For Samson, this was literal, but for us, from an emotional or a spiritual standpoint, the enemy will do the same thing. He will come after your strength. He will say, what makes you strong? Is the thing that's making you strong? Is that your prayer life? Is it your reading of the word? Is it your fellowship with believers? Is it you educating yourself on how to develop your gifts? If those things are making you strong, he will attack those things. He will attack the source of your strength. And then he will try to take your vision, because once you lose your vision, you're aimless, you are purposeless. You don't know where to go. You don't know what to do, because now you can't see your directions. And so watch out. If you are feeling powerless, and if you are feeling like you can't understand, you can't see your future, then you need to step back, start looking to the Lord. And then the final thing that we can learn here is the enemy will make you busy with labor that just keeps you occupied and tired. So he is in this prison. He has no freedom, and he is grinding stones. And so all he can do is purposelessly grind stones. For what point? Nothing is given. He's just busy and he's tired. He is blind. He has no strength. And so Samson, in this phase of his life, we can learn that surrendering to the enemy can be very subtle and very dangerous. And one of the things that we also note about Samson is, in this phase of his life, we don't see Samson with anyone. There is no mention of a companion. There is no mention of his parents. There is no one. And so this is another thing that the enemy can use against us. Right? When we are alone, we are vulnerable. The Bible says, right, a threefold cord is not easily broken. That's because there's strength in numbers. And so we have to make sure that we are surrounding ourselves with trusted advisors, with solid friends, and with brothers and sisters in the faith who can help us when we are going through difficult situations. Because sometimes we're in a situation and we can't see the red flags, but someone else may be able to. So we need to have people that we trust with us. And so this takes us into the final phase of his life. And this is where we see God is at the helm. And so chapter 16, verse 22 starts with however, or depending on your translation, it may say but. So Samson went through all of this. He's in prison, but but his hair began to grow. And what we know from Numbers chapter 6 is talks about the Nazirite vow is that if you shave your hair, you can restart your vow and you can regrow your hair. And so all of this is in line with exactly what God has taught about all of these things about Samson, right? His hair starts to regrow. So he is reinstituting his covenant with the Lord as a Nazirite. And then the Philistines, the leaders, are so happy to have Samson in custody that they throw a big celebration and they call for Samson to entertain them. And they put Samson to stand right in between the two main pillars of the building that they are sitting under. Now, all of the Philistine leaders are there. The Bible says all of them are there. And in addition, there are 3,000 men and women watching from the roof. And so Samson just requests, he just asks the boy who's leading him, hey, can you put me against the main pillars? And the boy does. And then Samson prays. He asks the Lord, he says, Lord, will you strengthen me one more time? And then he pushes down the pillars and kills everyone. And in this moment, this is one instance of Samson using his strength. And at this time, he does way more damage to the Philistines than he did in all of the other times in his life. Because now he has killed all of the rulers. All of their rulers are gone. And anytime you get rid of the leaders, right, you have caused massive disruption because now they have to restart. They got to rebuild all of their leadership. They got to rebuild their armies. They got to reset everything. And so this is a great time to attack. In addition, he's already killed 3,000 people who were just there watching. So in this instance, just one instance, calling on the Lord, and Samson is more effective than he had been the whole time when he was in control. And definitely more so than when he had surrendered his gifts to the enemy. And so might it look like for us to have God in control, right? One of the first things is we have got to come to him. We have got to come to the Lord and ask him for guidance. Ask him to be in control. Ask him, how do you want me to use my talents? What should I be doing? Where should I be going? And to bless what we are going to do, right? And then we see that with Samson, right, the Lord used everything that was going on in his life. All of the turmoil had ended up with him being at his lowest point, and God still used all of that situation to work towards Samson's purpose. His hair started to regrow. Now he's grinding stones, but this is hard work. So Samson's muscles are not going to atrophy in prison because he is not just sitting around. He's grinding stones. So those muscles are working. So he is still remaining strong. And then the hair is growing. So his strength is probably growing in magnitudes of orders of magnitude just because of the gift. And then the enemies, hubris, because they just want to show off. They just want to humiliate Samson so bad that all of them get together in the same place to mock Samson. And so now they've created this wonderful opportunity to get rid of all of them at the exact same time. And then Samson's blindness, which would initially seem like a weakness, is actually used in favor because now he can request, let me stand by the main pillars, and no one's the wiser because they have no idea what he's going to do. He's blind. They just assume probably that all he wanted to do was get something to hold on to because that's what a blind man would do. And then this is all used to effect the purpose that the Lord had said about Samson's life to begin with, that he will begin the deliverance of Israel from the Philistines. And then we can see from all of this. Now, when we look at Samson's story, it's very important to note that God does not forsake us because he did not forsake Samson. Even though we see all throughout his life, Samson is told to do very specific things, be a Nazirite, which he was. But then Samson broke many of the rules of the Nazirite, and still God showed up when he called on him at the end of his life. The gifts and the call of God are without repentance. God called Samson, God gifted him, and never in his whole life do you see where this gift was just not there anymore. Once Samson reinstituted his covenant, once his hair began to regrow, the Nazirite vow is there again. His strength is back. His gall, his the call to deliver Israel had never gone away. This had always been God's plan and purpose for Samson. And God was there to make sure that it will be done throughout his life. And so for us, what would this look like for us? No matter where we are in our lives right now, no matter where you are, no matter what you've done, no matter what phase you are in, if you are in control of your own purposes, God is not going to leave you. He has not left. He's not left you to your own devices. You can always call on him and he will come and help. If you have sold yourself out to the enemy, you can call on God and he will come back and help. Because we see this with Samson. He does not forsake us. He does not forsake us. He is always there. He always is for us. And so through Samson's life, we learn that if we are in control of our gifts, right, we may fail to seek God before we act. We may have a lot of confidence in our own abilities, but we might still be very dissatisfied. We might not have a lot of peace. And we can have some effectiveness, but we're not as effective as we could be. If we had surrendered our gifts to the enemy, we might feel powerless. We might feel lost. We might feel purposeless. And if you're feeling like this, then we've got to come back to the Lord. And if God is in control, then our effectiveness will be extensive, right? We will seek him continually. We will experience his peace that passes all understanding. And then the Lord can find occasions against the enemy through our lives. Then the Lord will be able to use us to win others to him, right? He can use us to speak into others' lives. He can use us to minister to others, to sisters in the faith, to those who don't believe. And this is what we have to aspire to. We have to understand that our ministries and our jobs and our call is to help win the lost. And so when we focus on this, when we understand that we have to manage our abilities, we have to manage our gifts so that the Lord can use us to find an occasion against the enemy. When we do that and we surrender to the Lord, our effectiveness will be tremendous. So I thank you for listening today. I hope you understand this message, that indeed the Lord has called you and he has gifted you, and none of it is revocable. Everything that he has given you is yours. Every good and perfect gift is from above, and that is yours to keep. But it is our responsibility to submit it to the Lord, to surrender to the Lord so he can use it as he needs to against the enemy. We love to have you out to our service. Come join us on Sunday mornings. Come join us on Wednesday evenings. And don't forget to tell someone about Jesus.